Hello everyone. So I thought I would make a video. I haven't made one in a while. I'm currently at a health, wellness, and recovery expo, and it helped me actually find the ideal word and phraseology to explain one of the things that's been rather frustrating in regards to Dorian Virtue's conduct, John Holland's conduct, John Edwards' conduct, James von Prague's conduct, and the various different Hay House authors who set people up to be scammed, defrauded, and medically endangered. And the phrase I wanted to talk about was the concept of restorative justice and making amends for what you've done that has harmed other individuals. It's something that James von Prague doesn't think that he has to do to people when he defrauds them, when he breaks his word and funnel feeds to those who medically endanger people and who scam them and tell them not to take vaccinations and wrong suicide information and sell them false spiritual gift certifications. It's a consistent problem throughout the entire Hay House author network, that they do not think that they should be held to standards of proper moral ethical conduct in how they conduct themselves as so-called spiritual authors. And they have this notion that they can defraud, lie, abuse, fail to make amends when called to make amends, and it somehow be spiritual to just say people should just forgive them while they continue down a path of exploitation of other people. As someone who's politically more to the right, it's been rather frustrating to watch someone like John Edward consistently trash Republicans and spew hate, including to the press secretary. He literally on the exact Twitter that I called him to address the life-risking fraud at Hay House that John Holland and Dorian Virtue and James von Prague and Dr. Brian Weiss are all tied to, and that he's tied to via Hay House on the same Twitter platform, the same Twitter page that John Edward basically told me to get lost, that social media wasn't a place to advocate for the lives and the well-being of other people. And it's negative to call people to standards. He's spewing nonstop vitriol to the Trump administration when he does worse. And it's rather confusing. It's confusing for me because the lack of self-awareness and the entitlement to abuse and to defraud and to think that you have the right to call other people out for not meeting standards you don't even live yourself. It just kind of blows my mind. But I couldn't find the word or the phraseology about restorative justice, and believe it or not, the word about making amends until I went to a talk today. And I went to a talk about issues of helping people have resilience in recovery and kind of like a social justice warrior kind of, I'm not saying it was all SJW, but more of a more progressive type of way of looking at structures, systems, how we interact with children, our fellow employees. It's very interesting. And the person who was speaking is someone who had significant mental health issues and had turned to drug addiction. And the person who was holding this talk explained how absolutely difficult it was to do the 12 steps and to realize that he had the moral obligation to go to those individuals who he had harmed and abused with his behavior, and to go to them and admit that he had harmed them and make amends the best that he could. He said it killed his ego. It was really, really, really rough. That the egotist, the drug addict in him, The selfish, degenerate part of him wanted to believe that he didn't have to make amends, that he can continue to just do whatever and not validate that he had harmed other human beings and that he had the moral obligation to do what he could to restore justice between himself and the people who he had harmed. And this is not someone like a James von Prague who's willfully fed people to life-risking fraud. This is a man who hurt people in his personal life, hurt people in his family, colleagues he let down. And he made a list, he made his self-reflection inventory, and he went down his list to make amends to those individuals that he could determine that he had done wrong things to. It's fascinating how the 12-step program calling people to do this is about validating the value of not just yourself and your entitlement, but the value of other people, the value of justice. It's fascinating how over and over again, John Edward takes money into his home by fraud at Hay House Publishing. He has willfully continued to promote John Holland, who has participated in life-risking fraud and continues to feed to fraud. And he has promoted Dr. Brian Weiss, who has enabled and emboldened the fraud of Dorian Virtue as a psychiatrist. And it's just the issue of justice. It's one of those things that is the number one marker of how absolutely evil, sick, and selfish the New Age is. It's an addiction in a way. And that might sound like a really weird way of looking at it, but today I was listening to these lectures, and I thought to myself, the New Age is getting you addicted to making everything about your goddamn ego. You, screw others, screw responsibility, screw consequences for your wrong behavior. Over and over and over again, only love is real except when someone lets them down. Or when the president doesn't do what they want, then all of a sudden, New Age authors suddenly think more than love exists. New Age authors suddenly think that there are consequences to choices that are actually lasting and that could impact people and harm them and kill them when it's Donald Trump. But not when it's them. Not when it's they who leave an incredible amount of harm in their wake, an incredible amount of medical endangerment. And it's been getting me really, really angry, but I couldn't find the words. I couldn't find the words that what I have been waiting for all these years is a validation of the value of a human person that none of these Hay House authors nor Hay House management gives. Over and over again is excuses to exploit and to predatorize New Age consumers while they sit around like egotistical jackasses judging the world. When they say to them, other people, oh no, you must not judge them. This is a sickness. And I know you're going to think it's really, really weird for me to say that the New Age spiritual mentality is a sickness. But I was sitting here listening to this lecture today, and this man who was in recovery was talking about the selfishness and the degeneracy and the egotism of addiction. And I realized how these horrible, vile aspects of being that someone who's going through the healing process of dealing with their addiction works on themselves to overcome, the New Age teaches you to develop. And It was, like I said, it was literally listening to this man talk about his own journey and his own struggle about realizing he had harmed other human beings and he had the personal moral obligation to make it right. And that other human beings had been conveying to him that he was harming them, but he chose not to make it right when he was harming them for reasons. He had reasons. And New Age gurus have tons of reasons why they excuse funnel feeding to what is completely false, what exploits those with mental fragility and mental illness, what risks the lives of innocent children, women, and gay men. You cannot claim that you value women when you lead women to what can kill them. When you lead women to the denial that having breast cancer checks or cervical checks or getting HPV vaccine are important things to do, and you're more than happy to lead to any nonsense Reed Tracy loads up into the Hay House machinery to be pushed out at people at the cost of their lives, you cannot say you value women. You can't say you value gay men when you promote and feed into a machinery system lies about how people get STDs, lies about how to prevent AIDS or to contain AIDS. When you encourage people to see Hay House as reputable when they promote germ theory, HIV, AIDS denialist Kelly Brogan, who tells HIV positive women not to take their antiviral medication while pregnant, that's really not loving babies either. And I know that no one in the New Age at Hay House ever wants to hear what I have to say. But you know what? It's time for restorative justice. It's time for public amends by degenerate, selfish, blowhard liberals like John Edward. Plenty of time to promote his personal fame. Plenty of time to promote the fame of his children. Because it's selfishness he always serves. Him, his wife's feelings. He doesn't care if he has to kill other people who trust his word by feeding to fraud and medical endangerment at Hay House to afford his entitled wife's clothing. All that matters is his wife's feelings, not other women's lives. And I know, like I said, no one ever wants to hear what I have to say. But you know what? Today, I'm at a health, wellness, recovery conference, deciding of whether I'm going to take training to do drug and alcohol counseling on other people and to go into an over a year-long program. And then to have like an apprentice type situation where I work for other people and get observed and have clinical hours. And I got to tell you, a New Age ideology where the consumer's lives, their mental health, their children's lives, and their finest, highest choices are made absolutely disposable, and deceit and fraud and greed and entitlement of New Age authors and so-called spiritual people, that's not spiritual. It's sick and it's evil. Loving good people don't willfully promote the kind of lies that Dorian Virtue put out, or the lies that Esther Hicks puts out, or the lies that Louise Hay put out tied to medical conditions. If you can't even love other people enough to preserve their very lives, you don't love. Love's not just some blabbery bullshit you spew out of your mouth to say in a positive fashion to get money out of people. Love is based on truth. It's based on showing up. And it's not about the value of just you and your experience. It's all the other people mattering too. You know, the people who do the 12-step thing are really into belief in God. and a higher power. And it's fascinating how in the New Age, when they destroy the concept of a higher power and they serve only themselves, how twisted, selfish, and predatory they become, and how they have non-stop excuses for it. So I want you all to think, if you're following my channel, a 12-step program. When people review what they've done in harm in their addiction, they have them do a personal inventory of people they've harmed and how they've made amends. I want you to think about all the people who've been scammed by Doreen Virtue, thousands upon thousands of people, some of them for thousands of dollars. How Doreen Virtue published a book in which she said she was giving refunds to people, but people aren't getting refunds. And for 5 years? Tons of people were defrauded while John Holland, John Edward, James Van Prague, Dr. Brian Weiss, and the rest of them absolutely enabled Doreen. They didn't care what was true. They didn't care what harmed. And that's all based on the value of devaluing other people as people. You know, the New Age talks about compassion and empathy, but they don't really have any. So this is my video, and it's not planned. I'm literally in an auditorium. I just figured I would film this since this thought